you should expect performance at the level of the lowest evolved member of the leadership team. The team maturity model really comes into play, not when everything is really just like normal, basic, run-of-the-mill, running the business stuff. We're talking about when, higher levels of complexity come in. So as complexity gets higher and higher, what the team actually needs to do is different. We actually need to be more like in a whitewater raft together. You fall over the boat, I pull you back in, or whatever. If you have somebody who is consistently being egocentric or reactive, I think they'll tank the team without the conscious awareness to know that's actually what's happening.
Well, when this is allowed to persist, it just drags down the whole organization, because it's not just the top team that gets stuck. It's everything that they are meant to be enabling. How do you either develop them or develop a plan for, mitigating that? And sometimes that involves changing leaders. Yeah.
It does. It does involve changing leaders, which helps you get to that kind of succession frame,
Yep.
But also that requires a pretty significant level of consciousness of that senior leader, not the composed look that you often as a CEO will get, but the other stuff. If you can't hold that frame, I think you'll dip down to the lowest level of development.
So what I find hard is when I look at some of that work and some of the correspondence, and sometimes when we're working with teams, one of the artifacts that I would often look for is just how do they communicate with each other? And it doesn't have to be perfect, but it often is quite revealing. And now there seems to be this kind of plastered over uniform way of communicating. Like everyone communicates the way the AI agent was taught to communicate, right? So they're sort of saying all the right things. And anyway, it sort of brought up, and what I've noticed is this question around team maturity and how do you evolve the operating maturity of a leadership team in particular, a top team especially. And so we have a particular context around that, but just this idea of how different stages of maturity open up different performance platforms. But what I'm noticing is a lot of folks are struggling with these gaps that are now starting to emerge, and sort of how do I close the gap? What is it that I'm experiencing versus what am I requiring? And how do I start to mitigate the development that has to happen both collectively and individually? And I think it's a heavy lift, and I do suspect all of the tension in the world, all of the, we talk about complexity a lot. Maybe the world has always been complex, but it just feels like it's fire hose kind of complexity now coming at you. And sort of a lot of individuals kind of going back into well-meaning but unproductive old habits. And I don't know. So I've just noticed, and it's been a couple of years since this idea of team maturity has risen up on the profile of the conversations I'm having. And there it is. So I don't know if you're seeing any of that or.
Yeah, it's really interesting. So the team maturity model, one of the things that it kind of says, the theory behind it is that the team actually performs at kind of that middle place. So you can have really highly developed leaders on a team and then not so highly developed. And it's like the center of gravity thought that
Yep.
like where the center of gravity of the team is kind of where they can perform. I actually have a little bit different perspective. And my perspective is you perform at the level of, you should expect performance at the level of the lowest evolved member of the leadership team. And here's why.
Yeah.
If I'm on a team and I can move to an integral frame, let's say, right? Or I can play creative integral back and forth. Because it's a transcendent include model, I can get to reactive with the right trigger, and I can get to egocentric with the right trigger, right? Now, hopefully I'll be conscious enough in a moment to catch myself and pull myself out, or I might see a teammate do that and help, give them a bridge. But if you have somebody who is consistently being egocentric or reactive, I think they'll tank the team. And without the conscious awareness to know that's actually what's happening. So I think that's really interesting. And I think the other thing that's super interesting is that the team maturity model really comes into play, not when everything is really just like normal, basic, run of the mill, running the business stuff. We're talking about when, higher levels of complexity come in, which if there's any business right now that is not experiencing high levels of complexity,
Yeah.
give us a call because I'd love to talk.
Yeah. Wait till tomorrow. Yeah. Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
Yeah.
So as complexity gets higher and higher, what the team actually needs to do is different. At lower levels of complexity, it's more like kind of like swim lane thinking. I'll handle my swim lane, you handle yours. Everything will be fine if we both just swim along and we're good. And in that, what we generally need from our teammates is like a high performance, right? We've got a process, extrapolate the process, just keep it going, great best practices, all that kind of stuff. But in a high complexity model, when what's going on around you is very unstable, we actually need to be more like in a whitewater raft together. And, me giving you my resources, you fall over the boat, I pull you back in or whatever. But it's not like you stay in your swim lane, I stay in mine. And so if you have anyone that is not capable of holding the frame that we are all in this together and we all need to be challenging one another and supporting one another, if you can't hold that frame, I think you'll dip down to the lowest level of development.
Oh, that's not encouraging, Betsy. That makes it harder.
I know, right?
I like the center of gravity theory slightly more. That's right, exactly. The preponderance of evidence theory. It's like, well, most of you are okay, so I'm sure that'll make it fine. No, you all have to clear it. Otherwise,
fortunately, that's not how that works.
Whoever's dragging their legs is going to take the whole boat down with them, or whatever the metaphor is. I think you're right. And I also think it's one of those places where, in particular for team leaders and for CEOs or divisional heads, and not that it doesn't exist in all teams at all levels, but there's something about top teams when this is allowed to persist, it just drags down the whole organization, because it's not just the top team that gets stuck. It's everything that they are meant to be enabling also kind of comes to a halt. And so this idea of how do you step in as a leader and have that conversation, whoever's, got their legs, slung over the side of the boat and are dragging it down or keeping us from going to that next, level. How do you either develop them or develop a plan for, mitigating that? And sometimes that involves changing leaders. Yeah.
It does. It does involve changing leaders, which helps you get to that kind of succession frame,
Yep.
But also that requires a pretty significant level of consciousness of that senior leader and knowing and understanding like what's really, really going on with my leaders, not the composed look that you often as a CEO will get, but the other stuff.
You know what I've been thinking about a lot lately, and I'd love to get your perspective on it, is I've just had a number of team sessions where this idea of, in the leadership circle profile, the reactive tendency around critical, and leaders who have a pretty healthy dose of critical in their profile. And they tend to be sort of very observant. They often have that connected to like probably high systems awareness. They're just sort of the first people to spot the irregularities, and they're very happy to put it out there. And I've had a lot of folks, asking about how to make that transition from leadership that gets experienced as critical to leadership on the team that starts getting experienced more as courageous authenticity, and something that they can build with. And I'd be curious, just in your work with teams or even with individuals, that sort of critical to courageous gap, because they start out in a lot of the same ways, like I think the desire for contribution often is the same under both, and yet the experience of others is very different.
Yeah. Well, I think the first thing and most important thing is for a leader to begin seeing that critical thing as a gift, and begin to think about offering what comes from that as a gift, not as a liability. And if you just got that frame, I've got a gift here, I'm offering it as a gift, not as a liability, I think it shifts what you do. The second piece of that is making sure that the language that you use when giving the information is in alignment with the gift, right? It's really easy with critical. And because it comes from a place of protecting, it's easy to jump in with sharp, harsh critical. And so it's like, how can I get my language to align to something that's more like I'm being a speaker of truth or in the spirit of courageous authenticity? And then the last thing, and I think it's the one that is like the full unleash of the incredibly beautiful gift that critical is when leaders start to realize that the origin of the information, while it feels like it's from their brain, it actually might be from the system. And so if you're speaking truth to the system, the way in which you do that and how you give that and how it lands is so different than if you're just speaking to what I think Betsy Leatherman versus like what the system is coming and telling me through the data sources that I have. So recognize it's a gift, use proper language to allow it to be taken as a gift, and then notice the difference when it originates from my brain versus the system informing me. Those are the three that I feel with. Yeah. How about for you? What are you noticing with that?
Yeah, I mean, and it depends on the type of critical, but one of the ways I've been starting to talk about it with some individuals is this idea of often you get super smart, really intuitive, really high IQ leaders who walk around setting off truth bombs. Right? It's like they're actually usually I don't want to say they're usually right. They're often right, and and that's been my experience, especially high critical leaders in top teams. Like sort of in a way, the system tolerates it because they are so good. I mean, if you were like wrong half the time and super critical, they would have just kind of done away with you ages ago, right? But so this idea of how do you go from throwing truth bombs into conversations to actually helping others see a more full truth.
Wow.
Right? Like that's your job. Your job is not to just kind of light it off and throw it in. It's to say, okay, there's a group of 11 people around the table and 6 of them, for whatever reason, aren't able to see what I can see. And so what's my job in helping them see that? And part of that is I have to be in relationship to do it. So I can't just kind of hurl, an opinion over the wall. And the other is that I always think courageous authenticity, the impact is it builds a platform for a conversation about what's true, as opposed to blowing up a flawed platform, that's not quite right, and that often the thing that you blow up is not entirely devoid of value. And so often they lose a lot in the process of trying to land a point. And I see it a lot in technical organizations and science-driven organizations. We work with a lot of those. I think the scientific method, and peer review as a process is a little bit of like, let's see if we can blow up the article or your study as a way of testing. And I think that works in a scientific method kind of frame. I think it's kind of disastrous in a human context in terms of teams that are really trying to do hard things together.
It's really interesting. I want to just connect on this builds a platform. I watched this happen earlier this year in a team session I was in. It was with Critical Arrogant, and the CEO in a meeting, he said, I want to say something. He's this great guy. Gosh, I wish you knew him. You'd love him. And he said, I want to say something right now, but it's going to come off as critical and arrogant. Here I go again. And so I paused him and I said, give me just a sec. I said, can you say it in a way that's courageously authentic and systems thinker? Can you think about it in that regard? And he sat there for a minute and he took a deep breath and he's like, okay, I'm going to try it. Let me try this. And he said what he was going to say. And the room, like he gave the room a platform to open up. And it was like 4 different people activated in a great way and jumped in with their thoughts, right? And so we stopped afterward, and I said, okay, can we just take a really quick pause here? Did you notice that when, instead of coming from arrogant and critical, you came from systems thinker and courageous authenticity, and you opened the energy in the room? It was unleashing of the energy. Did everybody see it? And they all agreed. We all saw it. And I was like, so that's the difference. That's the move. And I never thought about it as builds a platform, but that's exactly what it is. He built a platform for others to step into and then contribute their piece. And it was really, really inspiring.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, I love that. Yeah. Someone once told me that sort of the truth is like holding a ladder against the wall, that allows other people to climb it, as opposed to sort of, again, this idea of truth bombs. But there's something about helping us see. And then the other thing that I always, particularly for people who are like obnoxiously right about most things, I do not suffer that pattern. I am woefully inaccurate about most things. However, there are people we work with, and I think we know who we're talking about, that are just, like obnoxiously brilliant. And, one of the challenges for them is how do they help the whole room get smarter as opposed to using that intelligence? And I think that's one of the hardest things in leadership, especially like in the moment when things need to get done quickly and there's a temptation to just say it and move on and cross it off the list, as opposed to, how do you actually engage others in truth telling and truth seeing, and if you're seeing it and you have a unique ability to see it, how do you bring that capability to everybody and not just you? Because I think a lot of teams also kind of depend on these people. They'll kind of advocate the hard truth telling to the individual. I'll always sort of often see a profile from a leader who's like 98th percentile critical, arrogant, 98th percentile courageous authenticity, right? And I'm like, oh, truth teller. Like they love you and they hate you. You know, exactly. They don't know what to do with you and they don't know what to do without you. And, 1 minute they pull you in and then you do what you do and then they push you out. And they're like, it's like a schizophrenic relationship with my team. I never quite know where I stand. And so I think often is from the team sort of struggling with someone who kind of throws these truth bombs. The reality is when you work with those truth tellers, it's a really, really hard place to stand. And it actually is quite lonely. And systems are pretty good at bringing them in, chewing them up and kind of spitting them out a little bit, like bad cultural fit. In other words, we kind of got what we needed, but we don't quite know what to do with the sharp edges. Yeah. I don't know if anyone might notice this. It's a subtle thing, but you're wearing a hat today. And I think there's a story that goes with that hat and what that hat signifies. And I'm dying to hear it.
Yes. Well, I will tell you, I am very proud to announce Kieran Leatherman has committed to Bradley University.
Ta-da!
Yeah.
Lucky Bradley University. Absolutely.
Oh my goodness. We are so excited. And, I mean, just the whole story of like the last 2 years of his life going through the recruitment process has been incredible. It has been incredible to watch him develop and evolve through that. Both physically and mentally, and how he somehow has been able to carry this, go in, land, literally like land on a plane, perform, leave, go to school, get great grades, and then the next week and do the same thing, trying to find the right match. So that part has been incredible, and just such an amazing growth experience. And then he found his place. And I tell you what, this coach and this coaching staff blew us away. Absolutely blew us away. So Mike went down with him for his visit. I was in Argentina on the visit. That's right.
Of course, as you would be.
As you would be when your kid's in Peoria. Of course, you're in Buenos Aires, which also was amazing, by the way. We'll have to do an update on that. But Mike was like, you're going to love this coach. He's like, talk about leadership. Like, he has nailed approach to leadership. And Mike said he was wonderful. So then I got to go down. There was a camp and we attended, and I got to go down and hear his speech. And I tell you what, I was about to quit my job and become a baseball player. I was like, I have 4 years of eligibility. I want to be on that team.
Yeah.
Wow. This guy, his speech around becoming. And, I have this notion of a book that I've always wanted to write called The Game of Becoming. I've told you I'm captivated by the word devenir, the French word devenir, which means to become. And he talked about the way in which he sees the players and how they're becoming professional athletes and what they are becoming into, and his approach and how he's there to enable them. And I was like, this is awesome. We are.
Yeah.
He's just punch. Yeah, we are all in. Yeah. So, Paul, I think all of our listeners and I am wondering what's going on with the house in Italy.
That's right. Exactly. Well, to the 10 of you who are paying attention and tracking this.
10 is generous.
Yeah, exactly. The short answer is not much. We're in the winter phase, which is distinct from the summer phase. Both phases do not have work.
No action.
There's no action. But the inactivity is driven by very different inputs, right? So summer inactivity tends to be driven by prolonged holidays that last seemingly from about the beginning of July through till September. And we're now entering the holiday period, which of course.
Yeah.
November, it's close enough to Christmas to already sort of close things down. So in all seriousness, it's the planning is going okay. Every now and then I'll kind of look at it. The participation in that planning is lacking. We might have to get that Bradley coach over there to give the
exactly, get him inspired.
Give the regional council a little bit of, come on, folks, we can get this done, right?
Awesome.
So it is. I look forward to at some point being able to show some progress pics, but right now it's just it's a fun project. We're actually able to hold it pretty lightly, and have at this point still a sense of humor. I think partly because no one has invoiced any large amounts yet. I think the sense of humor will evaporate very quickly once we start spending money. But for now, we're. We're entering the holiday season, and not far from where we were a year ago, but optimistic. Well, and you mentioned you've been traveling a bit, and you dropped Buenos Aires in there, and I know there's been some other folks, or places. But where in the world have you been lately? Every time we connect, I never quite know what time zone you're going to be on or where you're going to be. It's that time of year, I suppose.
It's that time of year for us. So I did Argentina. So I did a meeting in Buenos Aires, and my sister-in-law came along, which was super fun. She is a really good planner. And so we actually also did Iguazu Falls and did like a 4-hour trip into Brazil. And so that was fantastic. So we saw Iguazu from both the Brazil side and the Argentina side. And I'll drop some pictures in so people can see. It was the most stunning, overwhelming, incredible, natural feature that I've ever experienced. It was remarkable, just absolutely remarkable. And we had a really good time. And we loved Buenos Aires. Oh my goodness, what a fantastic city. I had unbelievable clients. We had a great client meeting. Probably some of the most incredible international beef I've had. Like the steak was out of this world. Absolutely out of this world. So that was good. And then I did a Zurich Milan train to get from kind of the Rockreutz Buenos area down to Milan. And that was like highlight of several months. I know that that's probably a train ride that our colleagues in Europe take all the time, but as a Midwestern American to get to do that, it's like, this is really awesome. It was very special. So yeah, I love that as well. Super fun. And train travel is just so cool for like Americans don't get to do that as much. I mean, like we do in the cities and stuff, but not like that. So it was really cool. Yeah. How about for you? Where have you been?
I have been a bunch of places, but most recently I was in West Coast, so San Francisco.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, well, you and
Yeah.
we passed each other.
We did. We were at a certain moment. I think we were even in the same time zone. But so I was in San Francisco, which is always, I go back probably a couple of times a year. We used to live there north of San Francisco, so Marin County. We lived there for about 5 years. My youngest, Sam, was born there. So it's, 15 years ago. But the thing that struck me, so I always think when you go from the airport into the city or through the city up to Marin, which is what I did, you can always sort of tell what's going on in the city by all the billboards, and I feel like they basically get completely monopolized by something at certain moments. And like, there was a couple of years ago, I remember it was all like enterprise software and I don't know, Oracle and that kind of stuff. And then at a certain moment we went back and it's like every billboard was a phone. It was like, the Google Pixel and the Apple, iPhone. So it was all about phones. And then it became all about cloud. Remember, like Salesforce and like, all of these cloud computing platforms and enterprise stuff. And this time, I have never seen it so consistently. Every single billboard was AI.
Well, it had to be AI.
That's all.
Yeah.
It's just, that was it. Now I understand where they're spending $1 trillion. It's on San Francisco outdoor advertising. Exactly. It is everything you could advertise on has, and what's interesting is that, you'll get this, I think there's this campaign, and so it'll be a car broken down at the side of the road. That doesn't happen very often, but okay, now and then. And there's sort of this guy with his whole family standing around him, and they have the hood open and they're looking at the engine, and it just underneath it says ChatGPT,
Really?
or this person who's sort of staring into a refrigerator, and you could tell they've sort of had a long day, and it just says sort of ChatGPT. So I think they're just fishing for use cases. They're just trying to be like, you may want to ask.
You don't know what you want to eat.
Yeah, like, so, but it's in that very early thing. And of course, there's a lot of attention right now in terms of how big is the bubble? Is it a bubble? What have you? But I have to say, as a technology, I have found, when I think about how quickly it's come up and just where it was a year ago, and even the sort of kinds of questions I would even think to ask and sort of what you could get back. It could write me a 5-line poem in the style of, Shakespeare about, it could do these sort of novel things. And now I actually do find myself using it quite a bit, both work and personally. And I don't know what are you finding with clients, with the work that you're doing? How's AI coming in?
So I've been using it a lot. I actually have built a couple agents. So our head of IT has taught me how to do that. I'm sure he's at this point like, stop building agents, but actually he's really
it's the robot. You're taking over the world. It's the Betsy robots will be.
Betsy just building agents. Do this.
More agents.
Yeah. So I actually really am enjoying that piece. Here's what I notice about using agents for different things. It gives a great spark for me. And after about 4 or 5 interactions, it is either so off that I'm like, oh, I got to start this thread over. Like, as I've tried to hone it down and pare it down, when you do that with another human, it gets more crystallized. When you do it with artificial intelligence, it can go off over there on a tangent. That's irrelevant. So I call it my 5 times dead. So it's like, this is really helpful. Oh, this is interesting. Oh, wait a second. Hang on. And now that thread is dead. So it's like, I'm noticing that it's like super helpful. And then I realize that it's not real pretty quick,
Yeah.
and then I get annoyed, but then I can kind of go off on something else, but it does certainly accelerate me. And the way I've been playing with it is not that it's artificial intelligence. I actually, while that's the word and that's what we're going to use, I don't think that's actually the right phraseology. Mm-hmm. I think it is intelligence scaled or integrated through artificial means. Like, it's not like it comes up with a bunch of great stuff on its own. I mean, that is like born in, it's not like I'm sitting here and I'm having a challenge. I have to ask it to do something for me. Yeah. Right. And so I've been thinking about it as that intelligence scaled through artificial means, or intelligence, things integrated through artificial means. And it gives acceleration, and then it's dead.
I mean, one of the things that I've noticed, and this is true for some of the teams that I work with, is, so I think a lot of organizations have kind of turned it on, internally. So, I mean, whether they're using, Microsoft or Gemini or, Claude or something. But so a lot of the communications, you can tell, are starting now to get moderated through AI, sort of people who were kind of pretty abrupt and maybe not that polite, all of a sudden are using phrases like henceforth and, might you consider, I'm like, well, that's not on brand for you. Well, as my parting experiment, I'll tell you, if you want to have fun, this is something I've done, is take an email that you're about to send to someone. And this is a very important distinction. Do not send this version of it. But if you go into ChatGPT or Gemini or something, we have an agent, one of Betsy's many agents wandering around, just looking for humans, right? So, that are kind of trained on our work. And you ask it to write the email from the perspective of someone stuck deep in a reactive pattern. It's actually really good at it. I think it's better at doing that than like writing the creative version. So sometimes it's good to get the antithesis, because often, at least I would look at the email and I'd be like, that's exactly what I would have written 10 years ago.
That's awesome.
But it's quite good as a, not that. So don't send that version. Let's see if you can send a slightly better version.
Think about that as well.
Anyway, the miracle of AI helping us write horrible emails to each other that hopefully never get sent, but we can have a good laugh.
Don't send it.
Do not send. Do not cut and paste this into your all organization town hall chat. Yeah.
Okay, that's my trick for the day. I'm gonna go do it.
All right.
Awesome. Thanks, Paul. Talk to you soon.
Thanks, Betsy, and we'll see you next time at the Breakout Room.